Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Tuesday, July 12th. This is Gina McGuire. Over the next several days, we won't see any significant impacts to fire potential. However, today, gusty winds will occur across much of the area and will generally be in the low 30 range as far as wind gusts. Temperatures will continue to warm through the end of this week, with areas returning to above normal over parts of Nevada and Utah with very dry conditions. Over the last 24 hours, we've only seen some light precipitation over parts of southeast Idaho, with no thunderstorms reported across the region. Fire activity across the Great Basin over the last 24 hours has been light, with only a few small fires reported across Utah into parts of southeast Idaho and Nevada. Over the last 7 days, we've seen very dry conditions over the southern half of the Great Basin, with most of the precipitation focused across Idaho and dipping into far northern Nevada. This precipitation across Idaho has been above normal for what we would normally see this time of year. Over the last 2 weeks, the image on the right shows again we had some monsoonal moisture over southern Nevada and southern Utah, which was about 2 weeks ago, with very dry conditions since then. And again, most of the precipitation has been focused across Idaho, with still very dry conditions over western and northern Nevada, where many areas have not seen any precipitation in the last 4 to 6 weeks. Now looking at current ERCs across the region, ERCs have declined considerably across Idaho with the cooler weather and moisture we've seen recently, but have been on the rise over Nevada and Utah and are now above the 80th or 90th percentile across much of Utah and tailing back into the southern half of Nevada. Live fuel moisture has also been decreasing rapidly, especially across Nevada and Utah, and is now generally below normal across the southern half of the Great Basin, with some areas, especially western Nevada, seeing live fuel moisture near record minimums. Further north across Idaho, fuel moistures have been gradually decreasing, however, with the recent wet and cooler weather, are still near to above average. The water vapor satellite loop from this morning shows this cold area of low pressure that brought us very cool temperatures and moisture to the northern portion of the region is now well to the east, with brief high pressure ridging across the Great Basin. However, another upper level disturbance over southern Oregon will move eastward and bring more precipitation to the central Idaho mountains today, with drier and breezy air further south. Another area of low pressure off the west coast will also approach the region, and this will continue to keep drier westerly flow across the southern half of the Great Basin and bring some occasional moisture to parts of Idaho. There is a hurricane over in the eastern Pacific, however this moisture will continue tracking westward away from the Great Basin, with really no moisture moving back into the Great Basin until we move into next week. Today's significant fire potential will remain low to moderate over the southern half of the Great Basin and very low across parts of Idaho due to recent cool and wet weather. Today, relative humidity will dip into the single digits over much of Nevada and Utah and remain above 15 or 20% in the central Idaho mountains, where we'll also see showers and thunderstorms today. Wind gusts will be increasing as low pressure moves across Idaho, with most areas seeing southwest wind gusts between 25 and 35 miles per hour, with some areas over the southern half of Utah into the higher elevations of the Uinta Basin and Uinta Mountains, and southwest Wyoming may see some gusts near 40 miles per hour at times. On Wednesday, this trough of low pressure that moves across Idaho today will be located to the east, and we'll see drier and warmer conditions with high pressure ridging across the Great Basin, which will also bring lighter winds. We will continue to see areas of southern Idaho dry out as we move through this week. On Wednesday, we'll again see single-digit relative humidity over much of Nevada and Utah, with relative humidity decreasing across Idaho. We'll still continue to see some breezy winds over southeast Idaho into the eastern half of the Great Basin. However, these winds will be lighter than what we'll see today. As we move into Thursday, high pressure is now becoming more dominant in the southwest, keeping dry conditions and lighter winds across the Great Basin as we move through Thursday, with again generally moderate fire potential due to increasing temperatures, which will be above normal again across Nevada and Utah, and conditions will continue to dry across Idaho. On Thursday, we'll see similar conditions with low relative humidity and generally breezy winds. Again, over the eastern half of the Great Basin, we may see some wind gusts near 25 miles per hour, but the rest of the region will see general wind gusts between 20 and 25 miles per hour at times later in the afternoon. Looking at the overall forecast amount of precipitation, any precipitation will be located over the central Idaho mountains, where we could see amounts above a half or 3/4 of an inch. As we move into Friday, the ridge of high pressure starts to move off to the east as we have another area of low pressure dropping into the northwest. This will allow for winds to start increasing across Idaho on Friday, with otherwise dry conditions and typical breezes across the southern half of the Great Basin, with fire potential gradually increasing. As we move into Saturday and Sunday, this trough of low pressure dips a little bit further south, so we will see winds increase across the basin, especially moving through Saturday and more so on Sunday and Monday as a stronger area of low pressure drops south. Again, we'll continue to see moderate fire potential across much of Nevada and Utah, and this may increase as we go into Sunday and Monday next week, especially as winds increase with still very dry conditions. Also, another hurricane still over the eastern Pacific is continuing to track westward, again with all appreciable moisture well away from the Great Basin. Looking into Monday, again still stronger southwest winds and very dry conditions across Nevada and Utah. We may start to see some moisture move up into parts of southeast Utah on Monday, with possibly a return of showers or thunderstorms. However, there's a greater potential as we move towards the middle of next week. We will continue to monitor this as thunderstorms return to areas that have been very dry, and also with increased winds across the region as we move through next week. Looking at the 7-day amount of forecast precipitation, again the only precipitation is across the central Idaho mountains, with potentially, towards next week, moisture starting to move up into southern Utah. If we look at the 8 to 14-day outlook, which takes us into the third week of July, still trophy conditions are expected in the west with below normal temperatures in the far northern portion of the Great Basin and near to above normal temperatures elsewhere. However, as these troughs move through, we will continue to see increased winds across the Great Basin, and this will likely keep most of the monsoon moisture, again, further to the south, with the exception of parts of southern Utah. That concludes our briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.